Hello, I'm Rinya, aka Media Adaptation, and welcome back to a moderation while meets for a game. And it's Saturday, so it's time to talk about Erma. And before we begin, we need to talk about the elephant in the room.
I know you've let yourself go, but it's unhealthy to put yourself down like that.
Ada, I'm trying to be serious for a moment. He made a post on his page about the unlawful use of his property, as in stolen art assets, being made into unlicensed merchandise, where the profits do not go back to the creator of said work. The guilty party in question seems to be a fellow YouTuber called Erma Uncut. I believe formerly known as Screen05. Since the post, he's removed his advertisement and also taken down the link of which you could purchase them. So he seems to be trying to comply with the request. Just remember, if you ever want to support him directly, then buy from his official site. Or just hit the donate button. It bites that something like this could have affected his financial stability, giving him less time to work on his comic. But anyway, on a less somber note, we just crossed over 2.9k on our subs. Again, a huge thanks to every one of you for your continued support. We should probably do something whenever we hit 3k. So if you have any suggestions for that, then please post it down in the comments below. Also, if you like Erma, then you should check out their community on Amiibo. It's run by some nice people who really care about the comic. So if you ever want to stop by if you're bored and just want to enjoy some company. Anyway, it's time to take a look at part 3 of the new comic, Recounted Days. As for me, I couldn't help but start getting curious about the local townsfolk, particularly in their abilities, and how long they've lived with them. So I figured to ask them if they'd like to discuss the matter, specifically in an interview form. I would have understood if anyone had considered it to be too nosy. I can't help it, just my nature. But surprisingly, most of everyone was pretty open to it. So I grabbed my recorder and began interviewing. I of course started with the family, and what I found was interesting. Alright, Yuri, I guess we should start with the neck. How often do you usually stretch it out? When don't I? Technically I should only be stretching it at night, but when you have 2 hyperactive daughters that need to be watched constantly, who honestly has the patience for those kind of rules? Well, I try to keep my body super healthy just so I can stay fully active and not fall asleep while I float my head around. By the way, have you ever been to Okinawa? I mostly use the blades to slash and conquer my enemies, though they can be a nuisance when using them for more mundane activities. I guess my whole cucumber obsession just kinda came from my mother's side of the family. Although it's rather that, or go with my dad's preferences, which is, well, you don't want to know. Oh, you should go there next time you come over to Japan, especially in the summer. The water on the beach is so warm around that time. Yeah, Pops gave me this old kanabo for combat reasons. But honestly, it makes a much better back scratcher. We're supposed to bring good fortune to whoever's house we're living in. Pretty lame power if you ask me. Why should someone else benefit just for us bunking at their place? It's our money technically, so we should take it for ourselves. And they have some of the yummiest food. Don't even get me started on the ice cream. I hope this isn't too awkward for you, Ren. As awkward as when you brought Kintaro back from the bar? Okay, fair enough. So, I hear that plenty of Niriona tend to live around rivers and coasts. Do you have a home near the water, Ren? Not really. I would have, but... Okay, the recorder's off. You can speak your mind if you want to. It's just that I'm not comfortable living near the water. Not since I was younger. There was this incident when I visited Ishikawa River. It seemed nice there. At least, I thought at first. But then I got my bottom scar. I am so sorry to hear that. If you don't mind me asking, where'd you get the top one? Look, it's okay if you don't want to. No, I do. I just... Take your time. I'm here. And what she had told me, the cruel origin of that scar, I could hardly bear it. I can't help but wonder where the state of this family is headed in the next couple of days. After all, our little vacation can either end in 2 ways. Either everyone is on better terms, or in a worse state than when we got here. All of us are together, yet it still doesn't feel like we're whole. And whether Imika's parents show up or not, there's still boundaries that need to be dealt with. Well, we got a lot of info on them, and I'm glad we did all those lore videos on each of them before this one came out. Helps put a few things in context. Anyway, 2 points of interest that stand out. The first is Rin's second scar, where it's implied that it was given to her by her father, I guess for not killing the humans who attacked her. We'll probably get any more details on that a bit later on. And the other is from our frog turtle man. The way he describes his family is that maybe only his mother is a kappa. So I now open the floodgates for random speculation. Although he could also be referring to something else, as in how they eat human souls. But then again, the cucumber thing's supposed to be a blood by all kappas above that. So, might be a subspecies or something. Oh, and before we get on to our Q&A, he also made a post that in 2 days he'll start his 13 Days of Halloween. So be ready to see more artwork with Erma crossing over to other properties. And also around that time, we'll be starting our 31 Days of Halloween, where we'll be posting a new video each day for the month of October. And they're all going to be viewer requests. Although that's primarily everything we've done on this channel, so I don't think it's that big a deal anymore. But anyway, let's move on to our Q&A. As for our first one, we received 2 very similar requests. What is Erma's top speed? And the other is, could she win a race against several other speedsters? Both of which can be solved with a simple equation. Speed equals distance over time. We have 2 feats of Erma demonstrating her speed. The first being the race with the twins. And a lot like our race against Sydney, there's no clear way of determining of how long the track is, or even its duration. So we'll have to go with a measurable example, and to that we go with her fight against the Yukiona. Last time I told you that calculating her height would help us out in this case, since now we can use Erma as a ruler. In this shot, we can see that one section of the fence is roughly over 3.5 times her height, which would roughly give us around 12 feet. Now comparing a few takes, on the final attack with our Yukiona, it seems that she's standing, or floating, at least 3 sections away from her, making the distance around 36 feet. Her opponent keeps eye contact with her, only breaking it during her outburst, meaning that she only moved during the duration of that moment, aka the blink of an eye, which is normally measured at 0.3 seconds. So now we factor all this together and get her average speed at about 81 miles per hour from a dead start. Again, some of the other clips prove that she can go faster than that, but this is the only measurable event. Oh, and now we get on to the other racers. We have Tracer, Ruby Rose, Scout, Roadrunner, Albert Wesker, Accelerate from Ben 10, Sonic without the Chaos Emeralds, Captain Falcon, Dash from Incredibles, and Speedy Gonzales. I'm just going to go ahead and put a no power-up rule in place, just to make it fair across the board. Anyway, first place is Sonic, at almost 8,000 miles per hour. Yeah, he kind of dominated this entire race, as the second place is Accelerate at 300 miles an hour, but he has been shown to go up to 4. Yes, he gets a major power-up later in the story, making him 100 times faster than Sonic, but again, no power-ups. Third and fourth place is a tie with Falcon and Roadrunner, since they're both listed at the speed of sound, finishing just under him at 343 miles per hour. Then at fifth place is Dash at 241, followed by Ruby Rose at 121, sixth being Wesker at anywhere from 90 to 100 miles per hour. It's really hard to gauge his speed without the additional serums, meaning that Erma would take 7th, and then followed by Speedy, Scout, and Tracer. They're very good in short bursts, but not in a prolonged race. But with all that out of the way, I'll turn things over to Ada to read off the questions.
Can you make a gacha character of Erma? That seems simple enough. Could she beat her grandfather?
Well, that kind of falls into the realm of the unknown, since we haven't seen his full power yet. We did see him win a 3-on-1, just like she did, and if we go by the context clues throughout the series, Erma might be Emiko's equal, but she wasn't said to be stronger than he was. But of course we have to factor in his power loss due to old age, but in the end, this is just speculation. I'm unsure if the next story arc would end with them coming to blows, but part of me wishes they kinda would.
What if Erma met Mogeko from Mogeko Castle?
Well, that's a name I haven't heard in a few months. Mogeko Castle is a very dark but neat game we looked at a while back. If you'd like to know more about that, I suggest watching that video. Mogeko is a very twisted and depraved individual, so being friends with her isn't on the list of things she wants to do. Her first thought would be to capture or enslave Erma, if not just kill her. Most of the items she uses does come from a parallel world, and might actually be effective against her. But when it comes down to it, she's still human, and was easily defeated with a good backhand. So, point to Erma.
Could Erma beat TKO from OKKO Let's Be Heroes?
We covered her fight with KO a while back, but this is his empowered form, also a second entity, a manifestation of his negative emotions, with all his powers and then some. Last time we theorized that KO's tech copy ability would probably be used to copy Erma's rage mode, which would give it an even fight. But Erma would still have the win. KO, or just Turbo, uses the power plus a bit of his own, so making up the difference and probably putting him ahead of her. So, I'll side with TKO in this scenario.
What's the deal with the twins?
Well, as I said last time, it may be related to their dad. Or it could be that they got taken advantage of someone like the trio. Or we could just mix those thoughts together and pose the question, what if their dad was a commoner? And what if that was the reason that he was forced to leave? So they may be distancing themselves in order to keep from getting too attached to people that they know their grandfather wouldn't approve of, and would forcefully remove from their life. Okay, I got another weird question that just came to mind.
Always the best kind.
If these last comics are highlighting classism as an underlying problem, does our grandfather know about our Kappa and our Hookhead girl, or an item? Heck, could that also explain why our Jiragumo girl is an old friend of theirs, but was forced to grow up separately, and is no longer allowed to interact with them? Food for thought.
Can't she beat Jinman from the anime Devilman?
Well, talk about a good villain always being trapped in bad adaptations. Think a human-sized sadistic Gamera. He has extendable limbs, and can burn anything he touches. Long-range lightning, which explodes on impact, and a shell carries the faces of those he's devoured, with them appearing to be still alive, and screaming in pain, dealing massive blows to those who are emotionally fragile, which we've seen Erma fall victim to before. But this shell is also his biggest weakness, as it provides no defense, and he is lost multiple times by people simply just punching through one of the faces. And I see this fight playing out the exact same way.
What if she meets Scarface from Predator Concrete Jungle?
A disgraced warrior who was exiled from his clan after losing technology to humans. So he takes his revenge on the crime lords who stole the tech. A good guy by all standards. So if they met, they probably wouldn't fight. She'd more than likely come to his aid from being outnumbered. He doesn't blame all humanity, so he won't attack. And in fact, he has actually teamed up with other humans before. I do believe that they team up for a fight, but his honor won't allow him to endanger her child any further.
What do you think would be her favorite Godzilla monster?
You mean, aside from the big guy himself? I'd go with Rodan. And no, that has nothing to do with the fact that he's actually my favorite as well.
What would happen if she met with Jim from Troll Hunters?
Again, I'm going to invoke our rule of her idolizing any knight in armor. Unless you mean the later season where he becomes part troll. Actually, I think that still wouldn't change things.
What's the deal with the guy in the hat?
Oh, you mean Phantom? No one knows. We don't even know his real name. We've just been calling him by his assumed creature type. And he's been hanging around in the background in several comics for years now.
What would happen if she met Lydia from Moonlit Brew?
Oh, the wolf girl? Well, I'd probably go with the normal response of them playing fetch. But she's fully sentient, so they'd probably hang around. Or maybe go visit Sydney.
Can't she beat Jar Jar Binks?
Anyone could beat Jar Jar. Wait, let me rephrase that. Because all biases aside, that's actually a pretty good question. While at face value, Jar Jar isn't skilled at anything. But if you go by the cartoon Clone Wars, his greatest trait is his immense dumb luck. Some have actually stated that this is a form of force sensitivity. Again, in Clone Wars, he took out an entire army by himself, without injury. So he's believed to unknowingly change the luck around him. Kinda like Domino for Deadpool 2. So actually killing him becomes a problem. As, in theory, the fight can go on as long as he keeps running. So, on that grounds, I'm going to call it a draw.
I wonder if the twins will ever get a backstory.
I hope so, but right now Recounted Days only seems to be highlighting upcoming story plots for the next main arc.
Could Erma beat the batter from the game called Off?
An odd little indie game, but I believe that pretty much describes all indie games. Batter is naturally hostile to anything he deems unclean or impure, so a fight is inevitable between the two. His 3 add-ons, Alpha, Omega, and Epsilon, will make for a difficult fight. And then he has his beast form, which may or may not be a real thing. because it's stated that he doesn't technically change his form, only your perception of him does. So it's either all in your head, or he's been looking like that the entire time. It's an interesting match, because they're basically polar opposites. But I'm still going to rule in favor of Erma.
Is Lomas really a human?
Well, for all we know, he is. But there are several things about him that we don't know, like his real name. He's coming up in a new Tales of Outcast story, so I hope we'll learn more about him, and hopefully how he got that scar.
That's not how a DuckTales fight would end.
Yes, we got some people complaining about the conditions of last week's question, of Erma versus the reboot of Scrooge McDuck, saying that other things like his ghost butler, or any of the other characters, could have changed the fight in his favor. But again, it always boils down to two facts. One, as an explorer and the weird way that Erma's world works, it's more than likely that the battle will take place away from the mansion, and on one of these said adventures. And two, if we're going to factor in all the other characters, that's very different from a one-on-one fight. If the question was, what if Erma landed in the DuckTales universe, then we could add them all to the equation, but that's not how the original question was phrased. So I stick by my answer.
What do you think would happen if Erma met the 7 deadly sins?
Again, I'll invoke the fangirl principle about medieval fighters. Also, they're all stupidly overpowered, where even a single one of them could probably beat her. But again, I don't think it would come to that. I'd like to go into more detail about this, but actually I'm really behind on this anime, so I'm sorry.
What if Erma met Baymax from Big Hero 6?
She'll hug him, and she'll want a lollipop.
Is Erma a demi-human?
Well, technically, if you're going by referencing anyone who's part human and part mythical creature.
Can Erma be friends with Roger Rabbit?
I'll refrain from asking if you meant the movie or the book version, because no one remembers the book version. Well, as this viewer points out, they have a lot in common. They both have a lighthearted personality, both have been forced into fights that have nothing to do with them, they both have people they care for, and are both based on popular characters in media. So, I think it's pretty fair to say that they'd get along.
What if Erma met Iona from Dragon Nest?
I think Erma would try to figure out if his wings were real, and I think he'd question how she could fly without them.
Do you think Erma's grandfather plans to feed Sam to the Jubako tree?
I think that would strike him as too much effort. He seems more like a yokai that would probably kill a human by himself.
Why doesn't Emiko act like a ghost?
The original line of reasoning is, why does Emiko not act like her famous counterparts? And I've chalked it up to maybe that's the difference between being a born yokai versus a created yokai, as her aunts don't really seem to fit their pre-established molds.
What if she met Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas?
I think she fit right in with the residents of Halloween Town. Jack's always welcoming of anything new. And not to mention that Sally would think she's absolutely adorable.
What if she met Fatty Dragonite?
Again, like Baymax, he's a giant fluffy marshmallow that is incredibly huggable.
What if she fought everyone from Goosebumps?
Well, that's kind of a mixed bag of powers, as many of them could actually win a one-on-one fight with her. Slappy, on the other hand, is not one of them. He's just a weaker version of the dummy that she's already beaten. The Unloved come to mind, aka the Haunted Mask, winning on the grounds that the only way you could beat it is due to an outside force, which given the fight parameters she can't get. Also, there's the empowered version from the second movie, removing its restriction on its powers. There's also the Blob that ate everything that cannot be stopped. Then you get a few one-offs that make it difficult for her in a fight. Invisible Kid, Masked Mutant, and Monster Blood, to name a few. So in short, the Goosebumps world is so diverse that they would win in an overall fight.
How many story arcs are there?
Well, the first 100 pages don't really have one. Then you have Halloween Night, followed by the trip to her human cousin, the first real story arc dealing with the dummy, followed by the fundraiser, the Rats in School Walls, one of my favorite, then her birthday party. Then we have Family Reunion, the trip to the yokai world, followed by the search for Rin, and then we have the short one that's currently going on called Recounted Days. I think that covers all of them except for the comics. Oh, and one last minute add-on, and a big thanks to our new patron, Monosheep. I sent you a message on Patreon on what name you'd like to see at the end of our video, in case you'd like to use your YouTuber name, which is different. Again, thanks for your support, and I'll return you to your regularly scheduled ending. And that about does it for this video. If you have any other ideas you'd like to see made into a video, then please post it down in the comments below, and we'll add it to our next viewer request week.
It's now time for the part of the show where we ask you to help us appease the YouTube algorithm by dropping a like, share, or comment. It helps out much more than you'd think.
And if you haven't subscribed yet, then it's very much appreciated. And if you'd like to support this channel, then please visit our Patreon. Link will be down in the description below. Even if you can't give a lot, every little bit helps. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Anyway, I'm Runya.
And I'm Ada.
Remind you to take life in moderation.
Weep not, poor children, for life is this way.